Now that it's 2018, I thought it would be kind of fun to throw out some gaming predictions for the year. Now, this is something that I like to do when I'm like talking with my friends, or sometimes I'll throw them onto Twitter, but I've never put them in a video, and I thought it'd be fun to have this to come back to if I was totally right about something or like kind of hilariously wrong. I also wanted to mention that my Game of the Year video is on the way, my top 5 for the year. That is almost done at the time of recording this, and right after I'm done with that, I'm going to start working on a top 5 most disappointing games of the year, because I have quite a few for that. So I have kind of a few notes here, a few predictions that I wrote down. I didn't cover, every single game-related thing that is going to happen in 2018, just the ones that stick out to me, things that I kind of have some thoughts on. The first one on this list, and the one that I'm the most convinced of, and the one that I feel most strongly about, it has to do with God of War 4, or it's just being called God of War. Now here's what I have written down verbatim here. God of War 4 is like Star Wars The Last Jedi, and is critically acclaimed, but hated by the fan base. So pre-orders were bad on this game. I seldom see the game being discussed, and when it is discussed, it's to make fun of it and call it Dad of War. Now if you were to go back to the E3 conference where this God of War game was first shown, I believe I was pretty optimistic about it. I thought it was kind of cool. Nothing, I wasn't like super stoked about it, but I had a positive first impression of it. But very soon after I recorded that, I began to fucking hate this game, because I looked at the footage more and more and I realized, wow, this isn't like a trailer, this is actually the gameplay. And as they've shown more and more of the game, it's become very clear that this God of War has almost nothing in common with the past God of War games, save for having Kratos as the main character. What is God of War known for? It's known for really over-the-top hack-and-slash action, combos. It's nothing, cerebral. It's certainly not known for Kratos being an emotional character and having this, kid that he fucking takes care of. That's so far removed from what people liked the original God of War games for and what I liked the original God of War games for. And then you get to this combat where it's not over the top hack and slash. He's got like an axe and the camera's like over his neck. The combat looks like if Naughty Dog made a Dark Souls game. That's what the fucking combat looks like. And that might sound cool to some people, but I mean that in the most negative way possible here. Now, like I said, I have heard people make fun of this game, Dad of War, stuff like that, The Last of Us, God of War edition. But the more concerning thing about the game is that I barely even see that. I myself forget that this game exists sometimes, and it's definitely coming out in 2018, so that's not good news for the game. What I do anticipate this game achieving is a Metacritic score of at least 90, if not higher, but the user rating is going to be like 5.5. It's going to be just like Star Wars The Last Jedi. I'm calling it now. My next prediction has to do with Death Stranding, and I believe that it's going to show gameplay at Sony's E3 conference. I think that's a pretty safe bet, but the more crazy thing I have here written down is that I think a release date is going to be announced for late Q4 2018. Now, at first, this might sound absolutely insane for me to say something like that. The game is, so crazy, they haven't been developing it for that long. But I personally believe the game is much further along in development than most people would give it credit for. You have to think about it like this. When Kojima went from Konami to PlayStation, all these ideas he had for this game, they probably didn't come out of thin air. There's a lot of ideas here that were probably going to be used in Silent Hill, and stuff that he made during that transitional period before he established Kojima Productions again. Then add into that he didn't have to make an engine again this time like the Fox engine. He's already getting this Decima engine from Guerrilla Games that's already shipped Killzone Shadowfall and Horizon Zero Dawn, so he's just able to hit the ground running, I think. And he said all this stuff about how the game's going to come out before the year that Akira the movie was set in, which is 2019. And then there's this recent bit of news from Kojima where he said that, quote, development on Death Stranding is going well enough that SIE told us, we have never before seen a game being created at such a fast pace. We are planning an announcement that will further surprise everyone in 2018. So I think that the stars are kind of aligning for this game to come out far earlier than anyone thinks it does, but I can totally understand why people think that it's going to be like a PlayStation 5 game or 2020 game, and that's because Kojima's previous games like Metal Gear Solid 5 notoriously delayed, notoriously took a long time to come out. My next one is sort of Kojima related too, although he has no direct involvement in it. Konami's attempt to keep the Metal Gear IP alive, Metal Gear Survive, the game coming out, the zombie game using the Fox engine, using assets from Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I don't think that the game is going to be that bad. That's my prediction. The game will not be that bad, but it's just inevitably going to get shit from everyone. I mean, if you watch a video on YouTube of gameplay of it, it's got like, 1 thumbs up and then 10,000 thumbs down. People are just, it could be a great game and people are going to fucking hate it anyway. And I can understand why. I understand the frustration and the hate for Konami, but my prediction is that the game's not going to be that bad. And this is a game I'm so excited for it, not because I think it's going to be a great game, but it's so bizarre and interesting to me. I want to see it's kind of like an interesting business move too, because they want to keep Metal Gear alive, but here they are putting a game out with Metal Gear on it, and it seemingly is so far removed from what Metal Gear was all about. So I can't wait to try that game out. I think I might even review it if it's interesting enough. Next up is another game that's kind of interesting both as a game and from a business perspective, and that is Media Molecule's game Dreams. Now, these are the guys who made Tearaway for PS Vita and then Tearaway on the PS4. They kind of changed it up for PS4, as well as their biggest game was Little Big Planet 1, 2, and then they had a third game that was like really bad. Now, my prediction on Dreams, as I've written here, is that Dreams is a complete disaster and is Sony's Project Spark. Now, if you remember Project Spark, that was like Microsoft's sort of next level Minecraft thing, this really weird amorphous game that wasn't really a game, and they kept touting it and bringing it out at E3, making a big fuss over it. No one cared, and eventually it just became a failed project that they pumped a lot of money into. And I think that's what Dreams is going to be. Now, the other interesting thing about Dreams is that Media Molecule, they're a relatively large studio for Sony, and they've made Little Big Planet, which is like a huge game really for Sony. It's not on the level of Uncharted or something like that, but it's a pretty big thing. The Sackboy is kind of like a mascot for Sony in a lot of ways, but this Dreams game's been in development forever. I mean, I remember them showing it off years ago, and now it's finally dated for 2018, and the more they show of it, it's like, first off, what the fuck is this game? It kind of looks like, I get the impression that it's just going to be like a level editor thing like Little Big Planet, but it looks far worse than Little Big Planet. And I just don't see anyone talking about the game, I don't think anyone cares about it, and I don't expect it to be good. And while I'm not a Media Molecule fan, this game, if you're a Media Molecule fan, you should probably be pretty concerned about it, because it could spell the end for Media Molecule. They've been spending a lot of manpower, a lot of years of development on this game. I don't know if they have anything else in the works, so there's a lot riding on this game doing well, which it probably won't. Alright, next up has to do with From Software. Now, for those of you who are unaware, From Software teased like 2 seconds of footage at the Game Awards, this thing with a bloodied up weapon, and then it said Shadows Die Twice. Now, this could literally be anything. I would say that it's Bloodborne 2, and I think it's going to be announced by Sony at E3. Even if the game isn't Bloodborne 2, the game is still going to be a PlayStation exclusive, I think. And if it is Bloodborne 2, I have like a tiered prediction, like a deeper prediction, that combat will be even faster than the first Bloodborne and will place more emphasis on firearms and ranged combat. Now, the little bit of footage that they showed had some, like, Chinese or Japanese-looking characters in the background of it written on this scroll, and for a lot of people, that's enough to say, hey, this is not Bloodborne 2, but there's nothing to say that Bloodborne 2 couldn't take place in, like, an Asian setting, in, like, a Japanese setting or a Chinese setting or something like that. So there's still a possibility that it's Bloodborne 2, and if it's not Bloodborne 2, I have no fucking clue. Jury's out for me on that one. I have no idea what it could be if it's not Bloodborne 2. Now, my next one already came true because I'm a lazy fuck and I take a long time to make these videos, but this one was HTC Vive 2 is announced at CES or E3. The timing made sense for this. It got announced at CES just a day or two ago at the time of recording this. It's basically an HTC Vive 2, but it's being called the HTC Vive Pro. It has higher resolution screens. It's got a little bit of a different design. There's some kind of wireless functionality, which I know a lot of people that own these things complain about, the wires kind of being the tether effect. It's kind of uncomfortable. As I've made very clear in the past, I have no interest in VR, really. I think it's a big, huge fucking gimmick. That being said, if I was like a big YouTuber or a big Twitch streamer or something like that, and I had the kind of pool to get free products or stuff in for review, something like that, my god, I would love to get one of these in, because I'm just curious. I mean, I used Oculus Rift a few years back and was super unimpressed, thought it was dumb, and I look at it now, and they still haven't solved basic things like movement mechanics in games. You either get people moving around with a joystick, which people say causes motion sickness. I wouldn't personally know. And then the other movement solution, the one that's utilized the most in these games, is the teleport around thing, which is just a fucking joke. I imagine that that's even more jarring than walking around with a joystick. And, VR was supposed to be about, oh, we're going to innovate, we're going to give you new ways to play, it's going to bring gaming forward, but you haven't even managed to make movement mechanics as good as they already are in conventional games. So it's just a complete failure, in my opinion, and there hasn't been a single game on VR besides Resident Evil 7 on PSVR that has really struck me as something that would make sense to play in VR. Next up is related to PlayStation. Sony announces some kind of PS4 Pro 2 as an answer to the Xbox Scorpio. It finally includes a 4K Blu-ray player, but is not out until fall 2019. It is also paired with an upgraded PSVR headset release. Now, I think that this makes a lot of sense. I don't know how consoles are going to work anymore, to be honest. It's very confusing. So you've got Xbox Scorpio, and that is such a huge leap up from Xbox One and Xbox One S that I don't think we're going to see like an Xbox One 2. I think they're just going to keep iterating on the current platform and make these iterative upgrades like that. Now, Sony, with the PS4 Pro, that was more of a half measure than the Scorpio, so I think we're going to see a more powerful console this time around. Is it going to be called PlayStation 5? I'm not sure. What I am sure of is that Sony needs to put out a new console very soon, and I think they've had enough time to think about their next move on that front, and we're going to hear about the beginnings of it at E3. The other reason I think Sony is due to put out a new console is because of that fucking 4K Blu-ray player. I don't know, every day I think about this, it tortures me every day. I got a 4K TV about a year ago. I want to watch 4K Blu-rays because finally 4K Blu-rays are starting to become very commonplace. You see them in Target, you see them on Amazon. Most movies come out in 4K Blu-ray now, and I want to watch those things. But I can't justify putting out $200 for like a 4K Blu-ray player when I know that I need to get a new PlayStation at some point. I have a base PS4. I didn't buy the Pro. And I would buy a Pro right now, but it doesn't have the fucking 4K Blu-ray player, which is batshit insane to me because the Xbox One S, not the X, not the Scorpio, just the S, has a 4K Blu-ray player in it. So Microsoft is literally beating Sony at their own technology, but I have no reason to own an Xbox One S because I have a PC which already plays all the Microsoft exclusive games. And I'm starting to sound like a crazy man, but you can begin to understand the frustration here. And now that 4K Blu-ray is so prevalent for common people to get their hands on, I think that Sony's definitely going to, at bare minimum, they're going to put out a new PS4 Pro. Everything's the same except it has a 4K Blu-ray player, at bare minimum, but I expect a more powerful console. Now, the next thing, I think we're going to hear about this at E3, at EA's E3, and that is a Respawn Star Wars game. Now, we know officially that they are working on a Star Wars game. There's footage of dudes swinging lightsabers at each other in motion cap outfits, but I think it will be announced officially what it is at EA's E3 press conference. Now, you might say, dude, this shit just started development. They probably don't even have like a screenshot of the game at this point. It's probably like all stand-in models and stuff like that at this point. But the reason I say that they're gonna reveal this shit at E3 is because EA is like not doing well right now, especially with Star Wars. So if you haven't been keeping up with this, a few years back, before the first EA Battlefront game came out, EA signed a contract with Disney for exclusive rights to producing Star Wars games. And in that time, since that, deal was penned, Disney has put out, 3 Star Wars movies, Episode 7, Rogue One, and Episode 8, Last Jedi, What has EA done? They've put out 2 fucking games. And I can't imagine that Disney's happy with that. And then you throw in this controversy that just happened with Battlefront 2 that made made the Star Wars brand look bad, and then The Last Jedi made the brand look bad too. And so it's just at an all-time low, and Disney can't be... I imagine that Disney is not happy with this. And they're especially not happy with EA. I mean, I've heard that they were considering getting rid of their contract with EA, and then because EA's canceling all these games, like these single-player games. The Amy Hennig game got canceled. It's not looking up for EA and Star Wars. So I think that they're just going to be forced to show anything, like a name even. And it's going to be like, if you remember the Mass Effect Andromeda reveal way back when all they had was like really early demo footage. It was like a non-reveal basically. I think they're going to be forced to do something like that, probably by Disney. I just wanted to throw this one in here too. It's not game related, but it's Star Wars related. And since we're already talking about Star Wars, fuck it, I'm putting it in. Solo, a Star Wars story, is a complete failure and causes Disney to completely rethink their Star Wars strategy. Now, I think Disney's already completely rethinking their Star Wars strategy, but have you guys seen this Solo movie? Because when I went to the theater to go see The Last Jedi, they had a poster up for the Han Solo movie. Bear in mind, I had no idea that this shit was even coming out, and then I saw the poster, and it said May 2018, I believe, and I'm like, holy fuck. And all it was a, really basic logo that said Solo, a Star Wars story. I'm like, they don't even have a poster, and this shit is coming out that soon. That is insane. So I did more research into it. I found out that, like, writers or director had been changed on the movie. Inside sources saying the movie is a complete disaster. It's going to be the first Star Wars movie that flops. And I didn't even need to be told that to think that the movie is going to be a disaster. All I needed to see was a poster that doesn't even have, like, cover art on it. It's just a name. It's coming out that soon. We don't know anything about it. Oh, yeah, no trailer either. So, like, that's always a bad sign. So look out for Solo, a Star Wars movie. It might be entertainingly bad. I'm banking on it. Next up on the list is Crackdown 3. This is an Xbox One exclusive and probably PC too as well. But this was supposed to come out with the Xbox One X as like a launch title. Now it's a 2018 game. But I don't know why it was supposed to be an Xbox One X launch title. Because if you look at this game, it looks like a fucking indie game. I mean, it doesn't even look like an indie game. It looks like an indie game from like the Xbox 360 arcade. The game looks fucking terrible. This is being promoted as one of their big games. And if you look at it, you just want to like burst out laughing. It's unfucking believable. It's surreal that this is like a big game for them that they're going to put in a physical box and sell in stores. Crazy shit. But despite that, I don't think it's going to be a huge, like, big disaster that everyone talks about. I think it's going to be a silent disaster, similar to ReCore. Now, you guys might not remember ReCore. I barely remember it. That was like a game made by the creators of Metroid Prime, I believe. It was a $30 or $40 Xbox exclusive game that came out in 2016 or 2016, fall 2016. And it was really bad. It barely ran. I played it on PC and on Xbox. It was terrible on both. Games sucked both technically and creatively, and nobody talked about it. It was like a silent disaster. So I think that's what Crackdown 3 is going to be, because no one really cares about it, but it'll still come out and be bad. Now, the next two predictions kind of are related to each other, or at least they matter together, I guess. The first one is Battlefield Bad Company 3 is announced. Now, we've seen a lot of rumors about this, and once I saw the rumors about it, I'm like, you know what, yeah, that makes sense. I believe that, I buy into that. And then I would go even further and bet that the next Battlefield game in like 2020 is going to be Battlefield 2, and it'll be a World War II game. Now, all the rumors have suggested that Bad Company 3 is taking place in like Vietnam War era, and this is interesting because the next Call of Duty game is probably going to be Black Ops 4, and probably will also be set in like Vietnam War era. So this will be kind of fun to see, because these two games are going to, if they're both Vietnam War era, they're just going to inevitably compete with each other on a very direct level. I can't personally say I'm that excited for Black Ops 4. I've never been a big fan of the Black Ops games, but I'm super excited for Bad Company 3. I fucking love Bad Company 1 and 2, and Bad Company 2, that was like the most fun I've ever had with a Battlefield game, and then the two games that came out after that, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, wasn't having any of those games at all. I didn't like them. But then Battlefield 1 that just came out, I fucking loved Battlefield 1. I play it to this day. It's so much fun. Yeah, but this is going to be something to watch out for. The rumors are there. I think they're very believable, so it's kind of a safe bet. It's not really a prediction on my part, though. This next one is kind of interesting, and I put some thought into it. Red Dead Redemption 2 has most of its emphasis placed on the online component and has a Battlefront 2 style controversy surrounding it. Take-Two wants to monetize the online even more than GTA Online, and the lack of single-player DLC for GTA 5 does not bode well for Red Dead Redemption 2's single-player. It's clear that single-player is not where demand or profit is to be had. And another thing that I didn't mention in my pre-written thing there that influenced this opinion and this prediction a lot is I keep seeing articles from Take-Two executives where they're like, oh yeah, there's not going to be any single-player DLC because that's not where money's to be had. We want to monetize online. That's where we make money. And you know what? GTA Online, it's not even monetized enough. I mean, just look at it. If you keep up with GTA Online at all, which I used to play GTA Online a ton, like a lot. I got to like level 100 playing all the time. But even still to this day, I don't play it anymore, but I always see there's some new big DLC coming out all the time. And each DLC for GTA 5, the amount of in-game money required to enjoy the DLC just goes up exponentially every time. You know, first off, you got the heists. And those, there wasn't a big barrier of entry money-wise to those, and they actually gave you money. And as the DLCs and add-ons to GTA Online continue, you can see this trend until the point where you get more expensive cars, $2 million car in-game, and then you get to the point where you get stuff like the yachts, which were low effort, and then a yacht costs like $10 million in-game, ridiculous stuff like that. You can almost see them, like, as you watch the DLCs progress over time, like I did, you could visibly see them realize that, wow, there's a lot of money to be made here. Here's how we can monetize this with the minimum amount of effort required. And so GTA Online is very much it's not even like a pay-to-win game, I would say. It's a pay-to-play kind of game. Because all these DLCs come out now, and it's like, if you don't have 100 million in-game dollars, you can't even enjoy or touch any of the new content they've added to the game. So I see no reason for this philosophy to not continue into Red Dead Redemption 2, and I think that unlike GTA 5, where they didn't realize that beforehand, now that they do realize that beforehand, a lot more effort is going to be put into monetizing Red Dead Redemption Online from day one, and you can bet that that's going to take away a little bit from the single-player campaign, I would guess. And a lot of the people that are still playing GTA Online, they're the kind of people that only play GTA Online and like Call of Duty and Madden and stuff like that. They're not as savvy or into games or as aware of the kind of gaming industry and stuff like that. I don't know how else to put it. But when you get the people that play GTA 5, for the single-player campaign and stuff like that, when they get Red Dead Redemption 2 and they see this stuff right off the bat, I think they're going to be really upset and really mad, and it's going to start a huge controversy because they haven't been conditioned to it and they haven't seen it slowly come about like I have. It's just going to be like hitting them in the face day one, so they're not going to be happy. That's my prediction. Next up is my favorite thing to bitch about, Destiny 2. The first prediction is that Destiny 2's second DLC is not much better than Curse of Osiris and manages to further piss off what player base remains. We already know it's not going to have a new raid, just a raid layer like the previous expansion because you can see where it needs to go on the director, and it will be a little better. It has to be somewhat better than Curse of Osiris because by then they'll hopefully have addressed a few of the player complaints and started to add in things that, were in the last game again. And also, they have more time to work on this expansion than Curse of Osiris. Then my second one, Destiny 2's fall expansion is announced before E3. It is literally the Taken King and adds a new elemental type or class to the game. If it's a new class, Hawthorne is the Vanguard NPC for the class. If it's just a new elemental type, much more likely, each class gets a new subclass. The expansion is Hive-based and centers around Savathun, who somehow commands the triangle ships at the end of Destiny 2's campaign. Destiny 2 is a pretty barren game, but the one thing that seemed to come up over and over again as like a side thing that had seemingly no relation to anything else going on was this character Savathun, who is Oryx's sister. So it will be like the Taken Queen. And you know what? They're just lazy enough to go through with it, I think. I think these are pretty reasonable expectations, although it's not going to fix the game like Taken King did, because there's certain things in Destiny 2 that are so fundamentally broken that you'd have to entirely change the game, and I don't know if they're willing to do that. Stuff like the weapon system with the primary weapon, the kinetic weapon, and then having a second primary that's an energy weapon. That's a boring system. The heavy slot is overcrowded. The weapons feel weak. You don't feel powerful. And weapon classes like snipers are pretty much useless. And you only ever use the Sins of the Past rocket launcher in your heavy slot. So that's a really broken aspect of the game. And to change that would kind of invalidate all of the old content to a degree. And we know that Bungie likes to use their old content, so I think it's unlikely that this will happen. Alright, next up is a prediction for Microsoft's E3. I predict that they will announce Halo 6 at E3, and it will be like the only substantial AAA exclusive that they have. And what Halo 6 will be is anyone's guess, because people were kind of unhappy with Halo 5. I don't think it did very well. No one seems to care about Halo that much right now, which is really sad. I feel like in order to salvage the franchise and the damage that's been done to it, they'd have to make a game that they're not capable of making. So I think the only way is down for Halo, unfortunately. Next up are two Nintendo announcements. The first one, Nintendo announces a sequel to Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Now, I think this is... if there's any time that this is likely, it's going to be right now, because the first Captain Toad was like a spin-off of Super Mario 3D World, and now we have a new 3D Mario game, Odyssey. So if they're going to drop one, it's going to be now, and I hope they do, because I'm a big fan of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. The next is that Nintendo announces Skyward Sword HD for the Switch. I think this is likely because they've been releasing all these HD versions of Zelda games, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the 3DS, and then Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, so they're bringing all these Zelda games back into the future. And by the way, I think it's likely that all those HD versions may find their way to the Switch as well, but Skyward Sword would make a lot of sense on the Switch because the Wii U did not by default have the motion controls required to play Skyward Sword, but now with the Joy-Cons you'd be able to do that properly, so I think it would make a lot of sense. And while we're on the topic of announcements that just seem to make sense to me, I think Borderlands 3 is going to be announced this year finally, but the prediction is that no one's really going to care at this point. Now, I loved the Borderlands games, at least 1 and 2. Pre-sequel, I really didn't give a fuck by then, but the first two games were great and I played dozens of hours of them with my friends. The only problem is that if Borderlands 3 sticks to the same formula as Borderlands 2, I don't think it's going to be that successful in today's market. As unbelievably flawed as Destiny is, the way in which a game like that allows you to earn these items and then kind of show them off, like it has an almost MMO-like structure, like an MMO-light structure. You can go to the social hubs, you can do all this stuff. Borderlands is much more of like a traditional Diablo-style experience in that sense. And I also feel like a lot of the people that are looking for an experience like that are already playing a game like Warframe that is wildly successful. It's free to play, and honestly, the little bit that I've played of Warframe, it seems like a much more modern game than even a Borderlands 3 would be. So unless they've got some crazy innovation, unless they've really shaked things up, I don't know how well Borderlands 3 will do in 2018. I also think that Blizzard is going to announce some sort of new game this year, whether it's a sequel to a pre-existing franchise or something entirely new altogether. So those are my 2018 gaming predictions, some of them kind of out there, some of them a little bit ridiculous, maybe you're laughing a little bit, but those are sort of my ideas for how 2018 is going to go game-wise. If you have any predictions, let me know down below, and until next time, thanks for watching.